Final hour overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. John Gibbons later in the hour. Pierre, LeBrun will join us here in a few moments. Leafs, Sabres tonight. Saints, Rams tonight, Thursday Night Football. Jonas, Siegel in here of The Athletic. Frankie, Corrado, I'm Bryan Hayes. We talked a lot about the Jets this year because they've just quietly gone about their business. But they beat Detroit last night. Detroit just keeps losing. Ever since Kane arrived, they're 1-6-1, I believe. But it'll be an interesting little case study, I think, for other teams in the league and fan bases and media that kind of get obsessed with like star power. Mm-hmm. Got to keep Pierre-Luc Dubois. Have to have him. Got to pay him. Can't operate without him. All of a sudden, Pierre-Luc Dubois goes to LA. He's been terrible, which doesn't necessarily help this conversation because he's clearly better than what he has been playing like. He's got 1 assist in 10 games. That's it. His numbers are off the charts, awful in LA. It hasn't mattered because they keep winning. But Gabe Vilardi's been really, really good for Winnipeg.
Kid's a player, man.
He is. I like that kid. He's a buzzsaw. He skates, gets involved. And Winnipeg has not missed a beat. No. They just keep plugging along, and they keep winning. And Kyle Connor gets injured. It's all good.
Now Nikolai Ehlers is filling the net.
He looks great.
That line with Scheifele and Ehlers is outstanding
rock
right
star
now.
status right now.
And they got one of the best third lines in the league. Like, that team really has an identity, and they play to it pretty much every single night. And if you're going to beat them, they're going to make it hard on you on the way out the door.
Right.
They're a really good team.
They are, and I give them full credit because I was not anticipating this. And it's early. Like this time last year, they were great too. Yeah. And their wheels fell off late, and then they got to the playoffs and they got skunked.
Who was there last year, though?
It was Wheeler, Pierre-Luc Dubois.
2 guys that were there last year that aren't there this year.
Yes.
So maybe it feels a little different this time around. It seems like there's a different energy. Like you talked about Iafallo, the way he plays. Like Vilardi, there's something about guys like that where there's a little cost certainty for the team. They got something to prove still, like in the league. They want to make a good impression. Like there's something behind that.
Yeah. And it's an example of a team where if you believe in your culture, if you believe in the program you have and consistency and all that, and I know it can be very frustrating at times. Kevin Cheveldayoff's the only GM they've had since the Jets returned home to Winnipeg. And he can be very patient to a fault, in my opinion, a lot of times. The Scheifele deals, the Hellebuck deals, I think good contracts. I'm not sure how they'll age. We'll see. Both the guys over 30, given long-term deals. But they're both really good players that continue to be good players, core pieces for that team. And I guess the point I'm driving at is just because one guy leaves, 2 guys leave, it doesn't all collapse because of that. And it better not collapse.
I want to ask you something about that. You mentioned Blake Wheeler. He was like a big presence around that team. What do you think happens when that guy is suddenly gone?
Well, I think that presence gets shifted to other people. So maybe they have a different way of going about things. And now it's like, I don't know, like Blake Wheeler's a very, very well-respected guy. He's had an incredible career. But just maybe time had run its course in Winnipeg, and it was time to kind of pass the torch on to other guys to lead the room. And like Rick Bowness pulled no punches last year, but he had to operate that way if he was going to change the way things go there. Like we talked about it with Buffalo. We're probably going to keep talking about it with Ottawa, where you almost need to exaggerate so much in order to really change things. Rick Bowness, he did that there. Like, he said he was disgusted with his team last year.
Yeah.
Disgusted.
That was crazy how harsh his analysis was.
But was he
after
wrong?
That series.
Was he wrong?
No, obviously they really crumbled down the stretch. They barely got in, and they got skunked against Vegas. Like, Vegas just destroyed them. So, yeah, it was an embarrassing loss. And yet, 2 players, they move out. I think it's safe to say he was probably talking about a couple of those guys. But Dubois wanted out. Didn't matter what
whole year.
Exactly.
Publicly known.
Like it was
going
well
into the
known.
year, Jonas. Going into the year, remember?
Right.
In the summer, it was
and it was hyper focused.
Yeah.
It was like, what are they going to do here? What you got to sign him? If not, what do you? And again, this trade it has not been clarified that it was a great deal for one side, awful for the other. We're 30 games in. Right, Pierre-Luc Dubois is still a really good player. He's still in his prime, but it's been really bad for him in particular. Vilardi's had injury problems. We'll see what he is. Iafallo's a good player. He's not a great player. They got a couple of other pieces in there. But so far, so good for Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And I guess the lesson can be, at least early in the process, you don't need to just say, we need that guy all the time. If we don't have that guy, we're dead. No, you're not. If you have the right culture, right pieces, faith in your program, guys can come and go.
Yep.
One guy goes down like Aaron Rodgers, the whole house of cards cannot fall.
I know. It's a cautionary thing, though, hey, because one guy goes out, and now you're like, wait a second. Look at all this depth we got in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
We might not have that one guy, but we got Velarde on this line, Iafallo on that line. We got the Kapari kid on the other line.
Yep.
It's like, there you go. Now you're a deeper team.
It's working out so far. Joining us from the Maple Toronto Hotline, here's our TSN hockey insider, Pierre LeBrun. Think any lessons are being learned from the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade out in Winnipeg, Pierre?
Well, first of all, I'm with you. I think it's too early to draw any huge conclusions, but the Jets are one of the most fascinating stories of the year, really. If you go back to what people around the league thought was going to happen to that roster at the draft in Nashville last June to where we are today, it's crazy. I mean, people thought that they were going to drop a grenade on their roster because Dubois wanted out, and Hellebuck was kind of softly testing the market with a year left on his deal. Weren't sure about Scheifele. And I remember it was Jets, all we were talking about at the draft in Nashville and talking to other teams. And next thing you know, patience by Kevin Shoveldayoff, extend the goalie, extend Scheifele, pull off as good a trade as you can when you basically only have one or two teams to deal with, right? LA and Montreal on the Dubois front. And here they are. Very much looking like a team that's headed to the playoffs rather comfortably right now.
Yeah, and I was drawing a comparison. You could use Toronto as an example, obviously, where it's like, well, if Willie leaves, okay, Willie leaves. Like, that doesn't mean all of a sudden you're an 80-point team. Like, that's just such a loser's mentality. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that that's the mentality that Shanahan and Trey Living have. They've been publicly stating they would like to keep him. I'd like to see him stick around too. But if he doesn't, then I don't think it should shift to, well, they may not be a playoff team, or how are they going to survive without him.
You don't think that would be a question?
What would be?
I don't know.
You think William Nylander is the reason they make the playoffs every year alone?
No, but we've seen it this year. Having 4 stars who can kind of carry your team makes a big difference, because when Marner and Tavares aren't going, you've got Matthews and Nylander. And when Nylander and Matthews slow down, suddenly you got Marner. Like, you take that guy away, and then Tavares is 34.
Yeah, but you're going to fill.
I think you're underselling that.
You're going to fill the roster out. That was my point.
Like, you are, but
this is it. This is it. You can't. It's impossible to answer that in a vacuum, because someone's going to replace that cap room on that roster.
Exactly.
Yeah, not necessarily for the better, but yeah.
Well, no, we don't know either way. I mean, it's pretty hard to replace that kind of talent, especially given that right now he's underpaid at his current cap hit at the end of this deal. By the way, nice little tease for us. Chris Johnson actually has a William Nylander update on Insider Trading shortly. Sports Center, yeah.
What is it? It's up on Sports Center right now.
I don't want to ruin it for CJ. Come on now.
All right. Well,
no. I mean, I think what the CJ is saying is that while it's been super quiet, which makes a lot of people nervous all around, they continue to actively go back and forth in negotiations. They're still at it, and both sides want to get it done. So, and you might say to yourself, well, so what? Well, it beats the alternative.
Right, yeah. No, exactly.
Now, again, can they bridge the gap, though? I mean, Jonas and I have talked about this a lot when we see each other morning skates. It's I don't know. But he wants to stay and at least want to sign him. So you would think with that kind of mutual desire to find an ending point that they can figure this out.
Pierre, the Leafs are in Buffalo tonight, and are you surprised with the way things have gone in Buffalo this season? It got ugly last game at home. First of all, there wasn't many fans there, and the fans that were there were chanting to fire the coach. And I thought Kyle Okposo really hit the nail on the head after the game when he kind of talked about it. Like, that's a clinic in how to handle a situation like that. But it's gone ugly. Are you surprised that it's been that way this year?
Well, if you think that was ugly, and it was, losing 9-4 at home to Columbus and having the fans chanting to fire your coach, half the billing tonight will be wearing Leaf colors. I mean, that could be that's going to be fascinating tonight. Now, normally what we've seen is the Sabres players have actually fed off that atmosphere and tend to play some of their better games against the Leafs at home, almost fueled by the desire not to hear Leaf fans. So we'll see what team comes out tonight. It's an interesting thing because I actually wrote a column in The Athletic yesterday where I wondered after the firing of DJ Smith, which, by the way, was the 11th head coaching change in the NHL since the end of last season.
Wow.
11. 1/3 of the league has changed head coaches since the end of last season. Now, mind you, Columbus counts as twice there. But still, that's 11. And I kind of wondered, okay, are we going to breathe now for a bit? Like, is this it for a bit? Are we waiting until after the season for the next round of coaching decisions? And then the Buffalo thing happens. And, one thing to point out, I'm not saying that it means that he can't be fired, but Don Granato's signed an extension last October, in October of 22, which doesn't kick in until next season.
Oh, man.
So, again, he's not one of the higher paid coaches. I think it's around just under $2 million a year, the extension. So, I mean, that's probably pocket change when you consider the money you're spending on players. But it's still, I don't know, like I always think, the extension hasn't even kicked in yet. Are you really going to make that decision? So I really feel that Kevin Adams wants to give Don Granato every single chance he can to get out of this.
Well, Pierre, how many coaches can you keep cycling through? I'm just looking at it since Lindy Ruff left in 2013. Ron Rolston, Ted Nolan, Dan Bilesma, Phil Housley, Ralph Kruger, and now Don Granato. Can you have a coach change every couple of years? At what point do you just need to say, this is our guy and let's just try to keep going? I don't know.
Well, and Jonas, that's exactly what Kevin Adams told me last year when he signed Don Granato to the extension. I asked him about why, and I was just curious why he felt the need to extend him 2 years out almost, right? So he signed him. And that was the answer he gave, essentially, is that the Sabres needed stability at that position, at the coach slot. They've gone through so many guys, and Adams wanted to send a message with the extension that Don Granato was here to stay. And it's interesting because the other coach that some people have talked about, although I don't think there's any. I mean, I'd be pretty surprised if something would happen there. But Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh, he has a 3-year extension that doesn't kick in until next year that he signed 2 years ago. He signed it 2 years ago.
Right.
And it's for $5.5 million a year. So, I don't know. I understand the desire to bring stability so that people aren't, focused on, your coach being in a lame duck position, but maybe signing your coach 2 years out isn't proving to be the wisest path here.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of a catch-22 because Buffalo, they've also been so bad for so long that it can't all be the coach.
No.
Right? So, if you're a prospective coach down there, you're probably like, I'll stay, but I need a deal. We stink. It's going to take me a while to get you out of this. Mm-hmm. And I think what my reaction to all this is just growing frustration with the complete lack of trade activity in this league. Because the only thing teams can do now is fire their coach.
Totally.
They have no ability to make a trade, a culture-changing trade. They just can't do it, so they buckle and they're like, "All right, we'll just fire the coach." It's the only thing we can do. To me, it's bad for business. It's a bad look. Things have got to change. There needs to be some more flexibility, or there has to be some GM out there, or multiple GMs. It takes two to tango to step up and say, "Screw it, we're going to do it."
Well, you also have to be bolder than they are, right?
Exactly. I think a lot of the GMs are afraid of making the wrong move.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. Not winning a trade; they're afraid to lose a trade.
And again, which speaks to 11 coaching changes at the end of last season. So now, hopefully, the bump in the cap this summer will help that trade-wise, right? $4 million bump. I mean, is that enough to spur on more activity? We'll see. But the frustration that you sense from Sabres fans, and I don't blame them, by the way. It's been a long time. Isn't it interesting the symmetry between the Sabres fan base and the Senators fan base? I mean, DJ Smith was just fired, really. Mm-hmm. Steve Stamkos did not want to do that now. I mean, he would have wanted to wait till the end of the year to make a decision there since DJ Smith's contract was expiring, but he couldn't. He couldn't wait anymore. But the frustration with Sens fans, like Sabres fans, isn't just about this year. It's a culmination. It's like uncle. Like, when does the spiral end? And And I feel for both fan bases because, I mean, listen, I've been wrapped into it too. I thought this year both those organizations would take major steps. I absolutely did. I wasn't ready to say for sure whether either one will make the playoffs, but I certainly believe that they would be in the conversation. And they're nowhere close right now.
And you know what would make that more frustrating if you're a fan of one of those two teams? You see a team like the Canucks that have been bad recently, and they're really, really good this year, and the Philadelphia Flyers that are second in the Metro. So then I kind of wonder, Pierre, like the Flyers being good and where they are, does that put a wrench in Danny Briere's plans here as far as what he would wanted to do with the team long term? Because it sounded like it was going to be, we're going to strip this thing right down and build it up, but they're a good team. They're second in the Metro.
Yeah, good old Torts, eh? Speaking of coaches. It's certainly, I don't know about a wrench, but certainly a pause, I would say. And the one thing I would say, too, is that some of the things that Danny Briere has talked to with teams over the last 6 months, a lot of them are hockey trades that still bring people back. Like, in other words, I don't think this was someone that was just trying to strip it down and go into a sell-off as much as trying to get younger and make some difficult trades. So there is a nuance there. And it's also very difficult to do in this cap environment. But to your point about whether Sabres fans and Senators fans see the Flyers or see the Canucks, I'll tell you the team that probably really pisses off those two fan bases the most right now when they compare them to where they are would be the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, Montreal was supposed to be last in the Atlantic. I mean, they were universally picked by everyone to be dead last in the Atlantic. And to see them ahead of the standings of both Ottawa and Buffalo, and essentially, out kicking its coverage in terms of their expectations so far this year, that would be something that, especially for Senators fans, 2-hour drive away from Montreal, that would be tough to take for them, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Yeah, and yet the Habs, I think it's very commendable what they're doing. Very commendable because Marty St. Louis got them playing pretty well. They've got a young defense that they're growing and that they're playing. Yet it doesn't feel like Montreal's that close to the next step, right? It feels like they need some of those young players to keep taking steps. Like Cole Caulfield 5-on-5 has got to be way better. Slavkovsky, I'm reading some stuff out of Montreal that he's looking better, feeling more comfortable. It's still not an explosion of offense or like a dominant force. And, those are the guys you need, right, Pierre? Those are the guys you're going to be invested in. They've got to be players.
Totally. And that's what this year's all about for them, is that by the end of the year, you have to feel as an organization, you've had a lot of individuals who have taken steps that collectively makes it feel like as a team, you've taken a big step. That's what this year's about. And it just so happens that standings-wise, they're really doing, I think, better than they thought they would internally.
Yeah, for sure.
But to your point, it won't matter if some of these guys haven't developed for sure. And what really hurts them is Kirby Dach being
that
out.
was huge.
Well,
this was a big year to figure out who he was. And he had a good start to the year, but he's back to square one now next year. They have to figure out, is he top 6? Is he top 9? What are we doing? So that one hurts for them.
Well, and the other challenge they're going to have in Montreal is they've built this foundation of all these great defensemen, these really good young guys. They can't keep them all. So at some point, they're going to have to make decisions as far as who stays and who goes. And there's a very good chance, we've seen it, you could pick the wrong guys. You could send Arbor Jack guy away, and that guy could turn into a rock star somewhere else. And it's why did you get rid of that guy within your organization? They're going to have to make some tough decisions, and they have to make the right decisions on the back end.
Yeah, again, going back, all the more reason why these games this year are about figuring that out. Justin Barron with the OT winner the other night, right? Where was he when training camp started on the depth chart? So, for sure. And listen, it's their one last gravy year. No one in that market is grumbling when they lose. They're not going to grumble when they miss the playoffs, which they will. But next year, coming out of camp, suddenly the Habs have to get back with the rest of the Canadian teams and live with the same kind of stress, because I think that'll be enough for most Habs fans as far as, the little window that they had to just develop players. Next year, they're going to want to see a bigger step from them.
Yep. I think you're right on that one. All right, buddy. We'll do it again soon. Thank you for this.
And Cowboys by 1 in Miami. Let's go.
I agree. I think they win. I do. I'm leaning Cowboys. They have to respond after last week.
They haven't lost 2 games in a row since 2021, apparently.
That's right.
This week.
And Miami doesn't beat good teams. Dallas is a good team.
Okay, I like it. Thanks, Brian.
I'm feeling good about your Cowboys. I really am. I'm feeling good. All right, Pierre.
All right, guys.
There he is. Pierre LeBrun, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander, in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. All right. There you go.
You know who's one guy that I think they're talking about talked about on Insider Trading is Elias Lindholm potentially being available.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting name, I think, for a lot of teams, including the one here.
You think Toronto would be in on him? How could they fit him?
There are ways to make it work.
Yeah?
Right? Yeah. I mean, it just depends what they want to do, right?
Would you see that as like a O'Reilly situation where Tavares moves to the wing?
He could be your third center, just like O'Reilly ended up becoming.
Mm-hmm.
He would really help them a lot. It's just where are you diverting your resources and your assets, right? Do you want to get that real big upgrade on defense? Can you do both?
Yeah, it seems like it would be hard to do both. Like I feel like if you only had one bullet,
he doesn't make much,
but it's going to cost a lot. It's going to cost a lot to acquire him.
Yes,
I think that's the
point,
bullet
yeah.
you're using. Is if you're trading the first in a prospect, that's you have one trade to make.
But if I'm them, I'm not trading a first and a prospect for just Tanev. I wouldn't think.
No, they shouldn't.
Oh,
I mean,
that would be crazy.
They would have already done that.
Unless you're going to extend him and you hope he extends at a good number, then you get your money's worth. But even then.
But I'm thinking, like, is there a way that you can make it work so you can get both?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the assets to do that? I don't know. I don't think so. But
Calgary's got to retain.
I would
money.
ask.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I mean, he's a really, really good player. There'll be a big market for him, though. If he's available, Boston's going to be calling.
Colorado's going to be
Colorado will be calling.
Because, you know what, like we talked to Ray, and you kind of read between the lines as far as what's going on there. Guys calling people out, saying they don't know what they're doing, or if they think they're playing well, they're kidding themselves. Like, they brought in that Ryan Johansson. He's not exactly what...
He's been terrible.
He's not exactly what Colorado's been all about, like high-octane speed and... kind of like aggressiveness.
And they're missing guys, right? Landeskog's out. Lehkonen, I think, is out.
He's been injured.
Gerard is out for other reasons. Like, they just are missing guys.
Like, Landeskog's not coming back.
Right.
He's done.
Yeah.
That's one of your best players.
Yeah.
That's your captain.
Exactly. But, yeah, Lindholm will have a big market. I don't see how the Leafs are going to make that work. Like, unless...
Why? You retain half or you could even double retain.
I just don't think that's not what I would be attacking. Like, if you're asking me if it's a defenseman or Lindholm.
They need more help in the middle. There's no question to me. I know we disagree on that. I don't.
I don't disagree with you as much as you're claiming. I don't. But you are adamant that Domi cannot do it. I don't agree with that to the extent that like it's impossible for him. I think he's performed well at center. I think your argument. I've read your argument. I've heard your argument is. Ice time would suggest that Keefe doesn't have faith in him, but he's a third-line center. What's he going to do other than play 13 minutes a night? Like, how many more is he? Matthews plays 22 minutes a night.
Yeah. I would want a third line. I mean, especially with how limited their fourth line is, although it's improved of late, but still limited.
Yeah.
You're going to want another line that can play against good players, and I don't think that's it.
Just like, who's your prototypical third-line center that's out there and available?
Him.
Lindholm.
That's the only guy.
Well, I mean, there are other guys you can conceive of. Like, I don't think Monahan is the answer for that.
Monahan can't play
You
anymore.
could think of, like, Scott Laughton in Philly. He's not having a great year. He's not exactly...
I kind of like Monahan, actually.
I will give him credit after the major surgeries and the way he's played. He's actually quietly kind of returned to a decent form.
He's doing well this year.
But he's just not a great skater. He's slow. Like, to me...
Would you rather have Domi or Monahan as your third-line center?
Domi.
Really?
Yeah.
But it could go either way.
But that's similar because it's like...
talk me into both.
You're getting offense from both guys, and you're getting hurt defensively. So
I think Max, what he brings in terms of skating, playmaking, energy,
all good for
tenacity, is something that you can make work. Is it perfect? No. If they can improve on it, I would say go and try to improve on it. But I don't look at that. That's not like number one on the list of issues.
It's like number
for this
2.
team. No, I would say they need 2 defensemen. I would say that in order for this team to be like a Stanley Cup contending team, I think they need 2 like monsters on defense.
Try and grab a bigger guy.
I think they need multiple guys. I don't think you can have Liljegren and Gio and Brody. Like I just.
So are you
I don't
talking
think you
like
can.
2 Tanev types, or one Tanev type and like one guy who's going to help you move the puck?
The moving of the puck is not nearly as high of a priority for me. In the playoffs, it's not. Like, obviously, you have to have the ability in the modern game to skate a bit and move the puck.
That was a problem for them in that second series against Florida. Remember?
Right. But also, you look at what these other teams have. Like, if you have monsters, I think a big reason why I'm starting to turn on Vancouver, even on the idea that maybe they got a chance at actually doing something, is look what they've acquired. Look who they have on the back end. And yes, you've got Hronek and you got Hughes. The other four are monsters.
And Carson Soucy hasn't even been playing. He's a big guy. And Zadorov is there now.
Right. And Myers doesn't play tough, but he's big. And he's tough enough.
Well, he just takes up a lot of space.
That's what it is.
Plays like he was playing with Quinn Hughes on the top pair, and he looked out of place. But you put him lower in the lineup, playing 15 minutes a night, he doesn't have to do too much.
Exactly. Like I think if they could acquire two guys, if the Leafs could acquire two guys,
so let Lyubushkin and
220, sure,
that's it. All right.
Sure.
Interesting.
There's a lot of underwhelming names. There's a lot of underwhelming.
It's just like Vegas. I know we talk about their size. They also have like really good defensemen. Like Pietrangelo is big. He's also really good.
Outstanding.
Theodore is big. He's also really good.
Yes.
Like they're not just like big.
White Cloud is just a monster that plays smart.
Nick Hague, they drafted.
Nick Hague is a monster
kid, right?
that plays smart. Like, I'm not saying they're dumb hockey players. Hockey IQ doesn't come up enough in these evaluations either. You have to be a smart player. But I will take, in the playoffs, a guy who's 6'4", 220, who doesn't move the puck as well, over a guy who's 5'9", 160 pounds that does. And you cannot win with 5'9". You can't do it. You can't. You're right. In the playoffs.
And you don't know which teams are going to pack it in yet either. Like, wouldn't you like to grab Joel Edmondson out of Washington?
Exactly.
But they're in a playoff spot, so he might not be available.
How about Gudas in Montreal? Huh?
Well, why...
Gudas in Anaheim.
Gudas in Anaheim.
No, sorry, I don't mean Gudas. I mean Savard.
Savard, yes.
Savard.
They blend
guy.
together in my mind.
Well, they could have, if they really wanted Gudas, they could have signed him in the summer.
Nah, he didn't. Apparently, didn't want to come.
And
Savard is the guy I'm thinking.
It's a lot of money. Like, Gudas isn't going anywhere. They committed to him. You know, they're not gonna move off him in Anaheim.
No,
they gave him a 3 or 4 year deal. No, and Savard is a guy that they probably will make available.
Yeah.
Sure. But
he has a year left.
Yeah.
And that might factor in. All right, John Gibbons coming up. Yoshi Yamamoto, what does he know? What can he tell us? Are the Mets making a pitch? What's Gibby up to now that he's getting back into the big leagues? Catch up with him, get to our best bets. Brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets coming up later in the hour. Leafs in action tonight. Thursday nighter Saints in LA playing the Rams. Some rumors that Ohtani's going to be there with Yamamoto, although I've seen some people write in, maybe Al's Brothers Bot Farm, suggesting that is not the case. But I guess we'll find out tonight.
He's actually at home in Southern California.
Is that right? Ohtani is.
Just kidding. Yeah.
Or Yamamoto, for that
Al's
matter.
Brothers Bot Farm was directly responsible for the Ohtani plane watching.
We could blame him. Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
But it's still a pretty active offseason in baseball. I mean, there's a lot of big names still available. A lot of free agency is still going to play out in front of us. But one free agent was picked up by the New York Mets, and that would be our good buddy John Gibbons. He's heading to New York. He'll be a bench coach up with the Mets this year. We haven't caught up with you since the news broke, Gibby. Congratulations.
Hey, Overdrive, my favorite show, man. Hey, thank you. Hey, I appreciate that. You know, you guys were talking a minute ago when you started talking about Ohtani being on an airplane. I thought, well, you guys better slow down a little bit.
That got a bit carried away, man. Were they tracking you in New York? Like, Gibby's plane's coming up.
Hey, they'd make me walk.
What a setup, though. I mean, obviously you have a great history with the Mets, too, right, Gibby? I mean, it must be somewhat emotional. Like, what's that going to be like when you step back into that uniform?
Yeah, you know, I go way back with them. You know, I've had two teams in my 40-plus year career, basically, is the Blue Jays and the Mets. You know, I came up there, was a player, very mediocre at best playing career, but then they gave me my starting coach, and eventually, you know, of course, the Blue Jays gave me my shot in the big leagues. But, yeah, you know what? When they first hired Carlos Mendoza, I didn't know him at all, and you know, I knew the name. I think his first year as a bench coach with New York, it was my last year there. So, if honest to God, a thought came to my mind, well, he's first time doing it. Maybe they'll want somebody with experience. And you know, I just kind of left it at that. I didn't make any calls or anything. Then one day, DeMar O'Hara, my old bench coach here in Toronto, who's also coming back to Toronto, called me and said he was talking to the manager, Mendoza, and said, "Can I give him your number? He wants to talk to you." I said, "Sure." And that's how it all started. You know, we talked and you know, hit it off pretty good. You know, you can tell how when you talk to somebody right away, whether you like them or not in a lot of ways. You know, and so we'll see. You know, I think hopefully I have something to offer him. You know, because you know he's stepping into a tough role there in that big city. I know that.
Right. Well, exactly. I mean, you know what's coming in New York, and with the Mets, like coming off a disappointing season last year, you had high expectations. The owner's incredibly invested. Like it's got to be pretty gratifying. You got Steve Cohen down there. You know he's going to spend money when you guys are ready to pounce and win. The payroll's not going to be an issue with the Mets.
Yeah, imagine that, an owner that wants to win. You know what they're supposed to do.
That is a good sign.
You guys up there, man, you was right in the running for Ohtani, though, man. They were ready to shell out some money.
Yeah, allegedly.
Like anyway.
Gibby, did you ever think the Blue Jays had a chance at grabbing Ohtani? Like, you've been here, you know the city, you know the fan base, it's all great, but when it comes to the grand scheme of things in Major League Baseball, like, are the Jays going to grab a big fish like that?
Well, you know, with Ohtani, when he first showed up in to play in Major League Baseball, I guess it was 5-6 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was in Utah visiting some family or something, and Ross Atkins called me and said, "Hey, listen, if we're on Ohtani's list, if he narrows it down and we're on the top 5, you're going to have to fly to L.A. and we're going to meet with him and his agent." You know, this was 5-6 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. But then he called me back the next day and said, "No, you know, we didn't make his top 5." So when I heard the rumors that he was interested in Toronto, I thought, no way. He would have been interested. We would have at least made the top 5 back there then, I thought. But I guess, whether he was using them to drive up the price or what, it sounded like they had a shot, you know. And of course, the Blue Jays got that money, you know, if they really want to.
Well,
but
yeah. I mean, $700 million. What do you like? Can you even fathom that? Like, how do we explain that to people?
Well, what do they figure? You know, the lower end Major League Baseball teams are worth $1 billion, a little over $1 billion. Right. They're paying him over half of what the franchise values are in some of those teams. Yeah. You know, I could never see that justify that, but you know, if he was still pitching, okay, I could understand a little bit more. But the fact that he's not even going to pitch this year, you know, they're planning on the future. But you know, he's had 2 Tommy Johns. You know, that's you know, you don't know. I mean, guys have done that before, but how long does that last? You know.
That's the question. I guess, you know, the Dodgers have so much money, like New York. it's a monster market, and you know they've brought them in, and they're in on other guys. And we're chatting with John Gibbons. I'm curious when it comes to being a bench coach. You mentioned you got a new manager, big city. So obviously a lot of your role is going to be supporting him and you know, chipping in on strategy and basically allowing him to rely on your history and your veteran presence. But what about your relationship with the players? Like how does this compare, like your current role with the Mets, how different might it be in terms of player interaction compared to what you do if you were a manager?
Well, you know, there's no doubt in my mind anyway that, you know, when you're a manager, you still got to keep that fine line. You know, you're making the decisions on these guys. And when managers get into trouble, it's when they get too close to these guys and they're too buddy and all that, right? There's still got to be that line. You know, you can get along and function and everything like that. But with a coach, it's totally different. You know, you can spend more time with these guys. You can put out the fires. You can whatever it might be. You know, you're still in the decision-making process, but you're not the guy. You're not the bad guy. You know, if things go wrong. So we'll see. I haven't done it in a while, but one thing I did miss, you know, about being out of the game this last 4 or 5 years, I missed the competition. I missed the guys in the clubhouse and the camaraderie and all that stuff. So when I got the chance to jump on it, I thought, I was doing that damn podcast. That was once a week, man. That